Unicam concerning a bill in the makings that would change your right to defend yourself in a confrontation.
6 News' Joe Harris listened in on the committee meeting today and has the details.
Good afternoon, fellow senators.
On Thursday, the Nebraska Legislators Judiciary Committee heard testimony on a proposal that would allow you to use of force to defend yourself or someone else from serious harm without the duty to retreat. That is, the requirement for you to leave the situation and go to safety if possible. It would also give you immunity from prosecution for using that justifiable force.
Removing the duty to retreat from our state laws. Bills similar to this are often referred to as stand your ground laws.
State Senator Brian Hardin, who proposed the bill, says this would provide an avenue to ensure that an individual who is already a victim of a crime and had to use force as self-defense is not also, quote, victimized by the legal system. And supporters say it's not just related to firearms.
Whether armed or unarmed, the idea that citizens are required to endanger themselves by turning their backs and running away from a clear and present danger is nonsensical, especially when you understand the remainder of our self-defense statutes.
Opponents say that's not an accurate portrayal. Under current state law, you are not required to retreat first if you're in your home or workplace.
Traditional self-defense laws like Nebraska's do not prohibit a person from using deadly force if they believe it's necessary to protect against serious harm. It merely requires a person take an alternative course of action when they are in a threatening situation outside of their home if they know that they can safely do so.
Douglas County's top prosecutor also worries about the repercussions it could have when dealing with criminals.
We have gang problems in Omaha at times, and I'm more worried about a gang involved with another gang and using this defense, saying, well, you know, I had to use deadly force because I thought this other gang member was going to draw down on me, and so I shot. And so there's all kinds of consequences for this that I think are unintended.
Senator Hardin disputes other critics, saying it would not give someone a license to kill. On your side, Joe Harris, 6 News.
This proposal has to make it out of the Judiciary Committee before it can be debated on the floor.